Thank you for joining us. My name is Christopher Downs. I'm from Quadlyfe. I'm joined by Mark Frechette, digital marketing strategist and advisor to Quadlyfe. This week's theme is culture. And today we have Mark on the show to talk about what culture means to you and what culture means to the audience. What culture means to admissions, marketing, building your brand, and how it can really impact the decision process for potential college students. So, me and you have had unique conversations about how culture fits into the Quadlyfe product, but the people watching the show want to know, how can culture fit into their website? How can culture fit into their admissions process? How can it fit into their virtual tours? I think you touched on it the best in saying it's not a snapshot, but it's an immersive process.
It's not, and that's the and the reason why culture came up, and you put this, you had a blog post recently featured on LinkedIn. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you kind of started out with like why you decided to work with culture is the 2014. It's 2015 now, but of 2014. Merriam-Webster said culture is the 2014 word of the year.
Yes.
And it's super.
Which fits nicely.
It does.
It's nice.
It does. Thank God, because we had this scheduled.
Yeah, we did.
And no, we did not. But what does culture actually mean for higher education? We all know it conversationally, right? Like we know that it's unless you're a university where people go because, well, I'm 17 generations of Southern New Hampshire University students. It's unless you have that, it's culture's one of the big deciding factors before students decide that yes, this is what I want my lifestyle to be for the next 4 years, 5 years if I haven't figured out my major, 8 years, whatever.
And parents are a large part of that as too. Both of them.
They are, and it's not only that the culture is going to be what helps get them into the door and helps grab their attention and let them know that this is right for them. I think what a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of students don't even realize, is that culture is a culture that follows that human being well after graduation. Whatever that culture happens to be or happens to become. I've got a buddy who we went to a pretty notable party school.
Name it.
No, I'm not going to name it. I'm not going to name it because the parties are crowded enough as it is.
And that buddy is not me.
No, and but it's funny because no matter what he does, as soon as the name of the college comes out, we go, oh, and we happen to be right in his case. So culture follows, and culture. But what we as marketers and what as mission counselors struggle with is how do you share that culture? And it always cracks me up because I feel like because at product placement we do, digital marketing strategists, when we help brands figure out how to share culture, it's really hard. It's really hard for a local restaurant to share culture unless they're tacking on to one that already exists. It's really hard for an industrial manufacturer to showcase their culture. But because of the populations involved, universities have really strong culture. And many of them have departments dedicated to understanding culture, and I feel like they just never go. And what happens is whenever we try to share our culture, especially digitally, the colleges look more like real estate listings.
And that's where that's where this conversation brings me to, is because we talk about restaurants or other examples of sharing culture. The best way they can do that is getting your foot in the door.
Right.
And colleges are no different. And you've tapped on this in some of the talks that we've had about the importance of campus visits.
Yeah.
And taking that campus visit and then making it and showcasing it digitally. So can you speak on that a little bit about the importance of getting them on campus, but sharing that experience?
Yeah, well, I think, and if admissions people, they're watching, campus visits are number one tops for us. Actually, we know through Noah Levitz that the vast majority of recruiters and admission professionals say, the on-campus visit is super important. And I think what happens is when we try to translate that in other places, we don't remember what the campus visit actually is. If you describe the campus visit to somebody, you say, well, we walk around, there's a tour guide, and we talk to them a little bit about the area, about the buildings. And yes, but what happens is when all you have is that walk around and the tour guide aspect of it on its own, taking away the students. That sounds weird. Why would you do an on-site tour with no students?
Well, and I'll add my tidbit as a recent college graduate is, I was intrigued by what the the facilities had to offer, the dorm rooms, what does the bathroom look like, but
Yeah.
I'm also looking around and I want to see what kind of clothes are the students wearing. Can I see myself potentially sitting at a lunch table here?
Yeah.
What are people doing when they're not in class? Are they throwing a frisbee around? Are they playing flag football? Are they protesting? Because some schools are different and they all have a different vibe, and that is part of the culture.
Yeah.
And as a teen, where social media is of utmost importance, and we're so used to images, video, and audio clips, I'm looking for kind of the perception feel of what is it like around me, not the history of the building, how this building functions, what classes are in it, but who's in it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the big point here, right? Is the on-campus visit, I think, honest to goodness, unless you're an online school only, the on-campus visit is always going to be paramount, right? For the same reason that the best way to learn about a culture is just airdrop yourself into the gosh darn country. The best way to learn about the campus experience is to just drop the student into the campus.
So let's do that digitally.
Well, and that's the part that gets missed.
Grail?
That is the holy grail, and it's funny because the campus visit, when we look at the Noel Levitts, who went out and asked a bunch of you guys, what's the most effective and the most valuable, and what's the least effective, least valuable, the top one was?
Campus visits.
Campus visit. You know what one of the bottom one was?
I would love to know.
Virtual campus visits. So the minute we put it online, the most important thing we have becomes the least effective, efficient thing we have, even if it is the most technologically good-looking. And you know what I think the problem is?
Yes. I don't know what I think the problem is.
You might.
I might think I know what the problem is already, though.
If I told you right now that the best way to have an on-campus experience for potential students, the way you're going to really get them in and show them what it is to just, for the day you're doing tours, kick all the students out. Right? Like no students allowed today. We're going to be showing some new students around.
This is a little sarcastic.
It is a little sarcastic, but now go look at the college tours that are out there, some of the college tour platforms, and what they've done is, for the sake of bringing in the 360-degree panoramic camera of death, they've kicked all the students out for the day, and it looks more like you're selling the university, literally selling it as a real estate deal, then you're showcasing some amazing culture. It's you've never seen well, I guess you put it this way. If you see a brochure for a vacation destination that doesn't have any people, there's usually some warning signs when you get there.
It's like going to a restaurant.
Yeah. And what happens is we end up accomplishing the goal, even if you have because technologically speaking, there's some great software out there for virtual tours.
Well, like you said, though, sometimes the technological advances doesn't actually equate to what the students want to see. So we can have a 360 angle, we can do a panoramic view, you can do a Google Street Map. That's great, and it sounds great, but at the same time, the product that you're getting out isn't connecting with what teens are looking for.
It ends up becoming a distraction.
Right.
Not a distraction for the potential students, but it becomes a distraction for the marketing professionals, for these admission professionals that say, well, 360-degree view, yeah, that's so much more angles. And you
of a building.
Of a building, yeah. And you know what? There are places where tours work, and what's funny is a lot of what we know as an industry for campus tours don't come from the right places. A lot of the technology and tactics we use in campus tours come from people who want to sell you a hotel room, or people who want to sell you people who want to sell you a house. And on the extreme cases, people who want to show you a building full of art. And
museums.
Yeah.
Museum tour technology is being repurposed for higher education, along with hotels, timeshares, that sort of thing.
Yeah, which is great if you want to stare at one point and learn something very important about this one point, which is awesome in a museum because it's an amazing piece of art. But what it's not at a college is the students bustling around in the culture. It's moving, and something designed for static just simply doesn't translate. And that might work if you had a college or a university that had the best real estate. It's not the best location of that, but if you have the biggest dorm rooms, everybody has private bathrooms.
Right.
Nobody, like if you're actually selling yourself like you were real estate, everyone gets a London flat, killer, do it. But otherwise, you've got to lean on the culture.
Exactly, and it's the same should be said if your school football team plays under the lights on ESPN. You have a step ahead in the branding side.
Exactly, yeah.
So not every school has that luxury. So some schools where they're competing with in a smaller scale,
yeah,
they have to find unique ways to differentiate their brand. And when we talk about the virtual tours, that's one aspect of it, right?
That is, when you talk about sports, you're about the what we call ambassadorship, right?
Yeah,
like your sports team just brings your culture wherever they go.
Right. And another part of that is what you've been referring to is that there's no one on these virtual tours, no students as you're taking the 360 virtual tour. But those students are your best content creators and the best way to share your culture.
Yeah.
So I know if you want to speak on that a little bit about how schools need to, in addition, marketers need to step it up a little bit because there is a need to energize and engage your audiences, your students, your parents, your alumni, to share these experiences.
And it's funny when so ambassadorship. I'm gonna pull a weird example that only old people like me and older will know. But have you ever had to sit through a post-vacation slideshow?
Yes.
Right? It's the most...
that my grandmother gave me. No, I'm kidding.
But no, it's funny. It's you can't... The post-vacation slideshow, to the people who weren't on vacation, we fear it. You could have gone to the Amazon and discovered a new species, and that one picture of the new species, I love it. But the 42 pictures leading up to it of you in your hotel room, oh.
Right.
Now, if forget admissions counseling for a second, right? If you can picture yourself in the feeling of this is not going to be good you get when your aunt rolls out the slide machine and you're about to see the vacation photos you don't want to see because they're dull, they're not active, you're not participating in the culture. For the people who are part of the culture, for your aunt or your grandmother, or for me, because I've done it to you as well, for the people who took part of it, it's an amazingly joyous experience.
Right. But they took part of it.
They took part in it. And I think that's also part of the reason why so many virtual tours are as flat as they are. Because if you're already part of the school, if you're already part of that team, if it's already part of your life, those static images, they're alive to you because you're there every day. Right. So you've got to remember, you're sharing this to somebody who's never been to your campus. You're sharing it with somebody who's never been to the Amazon before, and so you've got to kind of take a step back and show them the life that's happening all around them. I love that technology is getting to a point now where it allows for that, but the technology that really showcases it is going to be technology that empowers storytelling and that we use for storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some really good experiments with this, actually more often than not as student projects and as independent films. But like the first person view campaign, have you seen this, right? Where it's like, you get the entire day from here, and that came out after a BBC show that used a similar tactic. And it was wonderful for gaining attention. It might have been just a little quick for what it needed to be. It was one person's view. But video, why aren't we putting in actual video moving picture? And
there are schools doing it, I can, from what I've seen on their homepages or their website. So you get to the homepage and there's parallaxes in the background of the homepage is actual video.
It's got a little bit of movement.
A little bit of movement to it, but still a little detached. And what we also see a lot of schools do is they'll use their YouTube channel as kind of their virtual tour.
Right.
And they'll put videos on that, segmented videos with different aspects.
Yeah.
But as a marketer, I think you can identify with the fact that that's kind of siloed from the other efforts that are going in. So putting it in the locations where students are more likely to go is very important.
And, and that's the thing is right now, I mean, what makes a campus tour magical is that it is all of these experiences, the experiences that the best schools are putting into video. Mm-hmm. So that they can be discovered on YouTube and stuff like that, right? What makes a campus tour, the best campus tour, so great, right? I mean, when we say the best campus tour, what's cool about the internet is you could make the best experience ever. Because in one campus tour, if they're there in person, you only have that one day. Right. If they're there virtually, you have the potential of showing the best individual days of the past couple of years. You know, in a virtual tour, powered by this technology that lets you tell a story, you can have the playoff game, right? And more importantly than that,
not just the game, the student section at the game.
Yeah, you
can team coming out of the. So when I get frustrated, Mark, because I look at it and I say, can we be a little more creative with the content? And the universities, while resources are tight and everyone wears a lot of hats,
Yeah.
they do have some pretty big teams involved in this. They have
Yeah.
web editors, they have their missions directors, they have their tour guides. They have people they can leverage for this.
Yeah, but not one of them looks like the last 5 minutes of Rudy yet.
No.
Right? But I think more people know that university's spirit through the movie Rudy than the tours they've gone through. And what's happening is that we have these big teams doing it, but nobody's really thought to say, what would the perfect day here look like? Right. And how can I use my technology? How can I make a, quote, virtual tour of the perfect day? And
they're perfect, and that's where the brand comes in.
Yeah.
Because the perfect day at every school is different.
It is.
The perfect day in every school is determined by what you deem as important, what kind of student you administrate, and where your values are. So that's where the individual brands come into play. Because obviously if everyone's doing it, everyone has their perfect day.
Yeah.
But the point is you want to attach with people, and they want to buy into your why. Why is it your perfect day?
Yeah, and it's kind of, and I think this is going to come in phases.
I agree.
Right, is I think the first step, and we're kind of in it now, is universities are going to learn, holy cow, video is a really strong way of showing what it's like to be here. As a whole, what it's like to be on the campus. And I think accidentally, by sharing sports highlights, by showing some of the speakers that come in, some of the presentations that happen, some of the student events, I think they're accidentally also figuring out that you can showcase parts of culture that aren't necessarily in the last 5 minutes of Rudy. Right. You can showcase things that are also important to the students, but they're not that Michael Bay fantastic. And so I think that's going to be the first step. I think the next thing that's going to come is smart. You will do this if you've got the video crew, right? What you'll do is you'll say, I could actually make a day of this. I can bring somebody from first class and show them what the classes in the quad is like in the morning. I can show them I want to say colleges bustle in the morning, but having actually toured a bunch of them, it's more of a shuffle in the morning.
Yes.
Especially Mondays.
Yes.
But you can show that kind of bustle. You can show what the breakfast rituals are like. You can show what the class rituals are like. These really important elements of culture. You can show the dorms. You can take them straight through a couple of class-like lectures. Think about the highlight reels of your best, most engaging professors and the best, most engaging experiences that they have on and off campus. And then you can bring them to lunch. And I've yet to have met a university that showed their lunch nearly as awesome as it is. I think they don't often give themselves credit for the restaurant quality food that they're serving. And the wide variety of options. And then you can take them through an afternoon, you can take them right into the game, but what's neat is you've done this day in a life, starting with the best morning, a couple of the best classes, your best meal, the best events you've ever had, and that day you won the championship. And so that's going to be the phase 2, is to build a perfect day. The next one is going to be, this is the most exciting to me, it's when virtual tours will actually come into their own. It's when you can use the technology to keep those moments alive where they were.
Now I'm excited.
Yeah.
You haven't heard this before.
All right, so what we've been talking about is essentially a YouTube video. It's as a admissions professional, it's the DVD you'd say, watch this 5-minute presentation. Okay, but what the technology is going to what that's going to lead to for the first smart school to do it is to realize that what we now call a virtual tour, this map, with all of this static life culture, what we now call this virtual tour, the framework stays the same. You're going from location to location to location. You're pulling in some stuff from the crowd. I wasn't going there, but
I was thinking social media crowdsourcing, but
that is awesome. Yeah. I think that'll probably help quite a bit, right? But you're putting this perfect moment back on its location. So you had the perfect game, and in the video it took place here. But now when you're taking the tour, the perfect game happens at the perfect stadium. When you're walking through the halls. I say walking. I don't imagine the VR headsets are going to be particularly popular. But when you're clicking through the halls or reading through, you're going to be able to kind of maybe overhear one of those lectures or watch some of those classroom experiences. Be able to see the food on the virtual tour when you're touring the dining room, not just the dining facility. So what's going to happen is first we're going to learn to show a perfect day. Next we're going to learn to take that perfect day and transpose it back over the locations so that you as a person as an individual, as a student, can actually go from location to location and have these experiences. It's very much what we do now for virtual tours, but it puts the life into it, where right now the life has been sucked out of it.
That's true.
And it's going to be really interesting is when you can start pairing that with the real tour. And we kind of do that now, right?
A lot of that's down the road.
Yeah.
But some of it is happening right now.
Yeah.
The thing with the part of the real tours, I was a former tour guide at an admissions office.
Yeah.
And it was scripted for the most part. You
Right.
go to these stops,
Yeah.
and talk about the history of it and what happens in that building.
Yeah.
And because obviously they're on campus, there aren't too many call to actions, like how fill out this application.
Right.
Can I get your email? You're getting them along the way.
As a tour guide, you weren't like just randomly like, want a pendant?
Right. Hey, by the way, I want to share this socially. But on the digital side, when we see these 360 view ones, and we keep kind of going back to it, those call to actions are missed as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in the 360 virtual tour. You have to actually do it through the website.
Yeah.
So I think one of the next steps too, and we're doing this at Quadlyfe, is making sure there's touch points along the way for the admissions people to start generating conversion and leads. The other thing is, when we talk about the future of virtual tours, there's a lot of technologies that are coming out that are disruptive, whether it be the drones, flyovers that are being used right now. That I think, like I'd like you to speak on, those are unique ways that people can showcase culture and also have that shock and awe kind of effect.
There's
which I think is unique.
I mean, well, you're watching. You know why I love the internet? We talk about this perfect moment, living forever. I have no idea when you're watching this right now. But for us,
that's very true. Hopefully someone's watching this right now.
Yes, they are. That's why they heard you say that, right? But the Consumer Electronics Show for us just wrapped up, and one of the things I've always loved, and not a lot of people caught on yet, not enough people caught on yet, is the most disruptive tech at the Consumer Electronics Show will dictate the kind of gadgetry we use 2 years from now in marketing. And for college and universities, it takes a little bit longer to get in there. Because
which we're working on.
Well, yeah, but you don't have Coca-Cola budget to say,
no.
Drones, I'll buy a fleet of them.
Right.
And
but right now, what I've seen to back it up from drones, GoPros.
Yeah, GoPros are coming in, and
those are frequently used, and they should be.
Yeah, and just
first person view sort of thing.
The small video camera movement in general, right? Like it started with the little. They were about this tall, and they were owned by a router company, and they did okay, but they weren't high quality. Then cell phones started having cameras, so it pushed those off to the side, and now you've got the Hero and some of the other cameras that are cheap enough to afford, rugged enough to hand to every student, and really they're hard to kill devices, and nearly cinematic in terms of their ability to grab super high definition footage. And there's a lot of technology coming out like the Hero that's going to... also you can put the Hero places that you wouldn't put any other camera. Right, like when we talk about sharing that first-person experience, that was shot through a GoPro camera mounted right about here. When we talk about the ability to show different kinds of stuff, it's still a visual storytelling medium, and we need those interesting shots, right? And so I think you're going to start seeing more colleges put cameras on the shoulder pads during practice for sports teams. And there's going to be some things that really lend itself to showing awesome stuff.
Imagine doing it to the valedictorian or for president of the class giving their speech at graduation.
Yeah,
that'd be really impactful.
Yeah, and
there's ways that it can be utilized. It's just getting it out, like you said, the onboard process. Well, we always talk about being an early onboarder. There's always a benefit to that.
The other thing that's starting to come out too is technology that's been out there for a while. 360-degree panoramas, right? I was really hard on them earlier because they're flat. I know they're technically round, but they're dead. They're not moving. And the kit you need to put these things together. I don't know if you've ever seen them come in with it. It looks like kind of like a Google Street View.
Something I couldn't put together.
It's a giant rig with mirrors and high definition, and they're thousands of dollars. And what happens is a college and a university can only use that through the company who's going to put together this virtual tour with no people in it, so that your college looks like a real estate ad. Right. And one of the big things I saw at CES this year was they look like a periscope. It's just a camera. It's got a little bulby lens, and It's doing for 360-degree panoramas in photography, kind of what the GoPro did for extreme action.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to be super affordable. Any administrator is going to be able to pick it up at their local. Are we getting money from Best Buy?
No.
From their local electronics store of choice, and be able to shoot these videos just like you do now with your phone. I know your phone can technically do 360s, but these are neat because they're shooting the whole thing at once. I think that's going to be one of those things. The technology needed to collect these stories is becoming so inexpensive that, one, your colleges and universities, you can start working it into the curriculum for those visual storytelling courses, but you can afford to have them and know that it's not as risky to put them in the hands of students, the most active members of your culture, to say, hey, go out and to recruit a couple of people.
And they are the most active members of their culture.
They are.
So when we talk about people promoting your culture, mediums to distribute that culture, and what your culture is, what are 3 things that the folks who are watching can take away that you would say are important right now? I'll give my 3, you give your 3.
All right, don't take one of mine.
You're going first.
Go ahead.
So the first one would say is get creative in the way that you, the mediums in which you distribute your content. We talked about video. Audio is also something in which you can do that. When you go to a campus, one of the first things you're really interested in listening to is, what are my lectures going to be like? Yeah. And for every school it's different, but for schools that are very academically focused, maybe a lecture, or an example of a professor giving a lecture.
Yeah.
The other thing would be making sure that you are tapping into all your audiences. So we talked about current students, but I think parents and alumni are also very important brand ambassadors for culture, especially proud parents who are happy to have their kids at school and are probably paying for their kids to go to school. They're very apt to share those experiences. So taking and leveraging those experiences and sharing them, whether it's on your website, your social channels, YouTube, etc. And then the third one is, don't be afraid of technology. Early on, onboarders tend to do better than people that come on later. Whether it's LinkedIn University pages, the new technologies that are coming out for videography. I think higher education has, for the most part, been behind the 8 ball in catching up with technology, but for the schools that can stay ahead of the curve, it's going to pay big dividends moving forward.
I think one of the things I'm really excited for is we talked a little bit about using storytelling to share culture, and as this emphasis on how to share the culture, not just the slideshow, comes about. I think what's really interesting is I work with a lot of different marketing organizations, and I don't want to dog on universities and higher education here especially, but you've never really had an unfair advantage before over Coca-Cola. You've never had an unfair advantage over major consumer brands or brands with giant budgets before. With this year being the year of culture, you have an advantage over Coca-Cola, and it's the 2 people you should go to right away, today, at the end of this. Well, maybe call Chris, but after you're done talking to Chris, go to the best language professor your school has, and go to the best sociology professor your school has, and ask them, because their job is to take cultures and share them with your students. So they're professionals in the art of taking what it means to have a culture and go. And they'll show you the stuff that in their field, the techniques they've been using for decades, that technology continues to empower, will do it. And then follow one of those, that's one. The other one is, pick up one of their books or a National Geographic special, and watch how a culture, because whether it's your school culture or the culture of another nation, it's still a lot to share, and there's still some ways to share it. Watch how a culture that isn't yours is shared. Be one of the first to get outside of higher education for how higher education should share. Right. And what happens is you don't become a follower of a relatively slow. Right. Yeah, you become the person everyone else points at. And I know that. Piece of advice. Yeah, and in a competitive market, being one of the ones that you'll look good personally and professionally, right? If you can crack the code on how to share culture. Choice of gigs for you, unless you want to retire, write a book, and do that. But it does something really great for your school too. In a competitive market, when you're the one who can actually share this clearly in a way people can understand, When you experience a culture in such a way that you really feel like you get it, that's a stronger connection than what your competitors are able to actually put out. So it's going to be working with the team, working outside of higher education to grab lessons on specifically how to share our cultures, realizing that what we've been trying to do over the past couple of years as an industry at higher education is we're trying to share experiences as digital snapshots, and we're learning that that's not proving to be as powerful as the combination of a context and a story kind of wrapped together.
And the story is a large part of that.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm hoping drones, but right now you can't.
We're going to argue with that one.
No, well,
that's for another webinar.
Yeah,
another video.
Write your FAA because you should be able to fly little things. Yeah, so that's what I have though.
Yeah,
drones need to be legalized.
That's number one.
That's number one on my list.
And in terms of professionals on campus, people that actually teach and share culture, so whether it be sociology professors, or was the other one that you mentioned?
So like your sociology and most language courses are now becoming more immersive and stuff like that. I'm sure they'd be really happy to talk to you, and I really hope it leads to a couple of moments, because this is how you know it's great advice when you go, years I've been doing this, how is this not here? How is no one doing this? And I want you to have that moment.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So 2014 was the year the word culture took its importance, but I think 2015 is how you're going to share culture, both digitally but also traditionally as well.
Yeah, and hopefully the word of the year for 2015 is equally as interesting.
Hopefully it's applicants.
Applicants. As long as it's not selfie.
It might be.
It's unfortunate.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to reach us at both of our emails, cdowns@Quadlyfe.
I'm Mark and we do if you have questions, but you can connect with us probably, I prefer Twitter. I like having conversations openly and honestly there. Easiest way to go hold me is at We Do Inc. So WEDUINC on Twitter. And you are
at Quadlyfe
with the QA,
the L instead of the Y instead of an I.
Oh, this is awesome. This is on YouTube, right?
Yes.
If you want to get a hold of us, the information's right down there in the comments section.
Right.
Leave a comment. Chris will get to me if you have a question for me,
Yeah.
and he can answer anything else.
Thank you for joining us, Mark. I appreciate it. It's a good conversation.
It's a great time to sip out of my branded mug.